Hello, everybody. My name is Joel Filderman, and welcome to the Dog Trainers Connection. I am not a dog trainer. These other people you see here are. We get together, we discuss a topic, come up with some thoughts, some ideas, sometimes some answers, but we always have an interesting discussion. For today's topic, Pam, you brought this up that in your state of Vermont, that there is a bill that is being proposed where, for all intents and purposes, dog trainers will have to give the clients informed consent, basically tell them everything that they're going to do. I will read the short form of that bill. The subject is professions and occupations, dog trainers, client-informed consent. The statement of the purpose of the bill as introduced. This bill proposes to require a dog trainer to inform his or her client of the methods and equipment that will be used to train the client's dog, and of the risks and benefits of those methods and equipment, and to require the dog trainer to obtain the client's consent to that training. A dog trainer would specifically be required to inform his or her client of the dog's diagnosis, if known, the nature and purpose of the dog trainer's recommended interventions to train the dog, and the burdens, risks, and expected benefits of all training options, including the option to forego training. So that's a mouthful. Pam, you want to comment on it since
I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who is the sponsor of the bill?
I lost it.
Name and party, please.
Yes, I don't know the party.
You should. It should say DRI next to the sponsor.
Okay, I will look.
Or it might say P for progressive.
And give me just a moment. I will open that. It says introduced by Representative Coffey of Guilford. It does not. This is the short form, so it may not say that. Why don't you make a comment, whatever comment you were going to make on that, and I will look that up.
So when I participated in the Zoom, I listened in the Zoom when this was read into the record originally for a first reading. And there were no comments requested at the time or any of that. They just sort of read it into the record. When Representative Coffey read it into the record, she elaborated beyond what was read there and talked about if a dog trainer was going to kick or punch your dog or something, you should know about that in advance. And my internal thoughts, because I couldn't share them, were if anybody is going to punch and kick your dog, they shouldn't be paid to be training anything. And certainly if that came up in any dog trainer's repertoire anywhere, it wouldn't be anything they were planning to do. I have a feeling there are people who, resort to terrible things, but certainly they wouldn't disclose that I'm planning to punch your dog. Should he do this, I will do that. That's ridiculous. That's not anything anybody's going to disclose. I don't know most of this sort of thing. For anyone who's never dealt with canine legislation, I've been on that, following that for 30 years. But most of these scenarios of legislation regarding canines, regarding dogs, dog trainers, any of this stuff, there's usually some sort of causative, something happened. And after something happened, people say, we have to do something. And do something is often put a law in the books. Whether that law is actually enforceable, whether there's anybody that's going to follow any of this up is not pertinent to most people who want to do something. So I don't know what the history of it, of this is. I need to schedule a meeting with Representative Coffey myself, I think, although I am not in her district, so I don't know that she will meet with me. But for, again, anybody not involved in canine legislation that's watching this, it's really important to get to know your local municipal legislators, town, county, district, whatever, however, parish, however your community is set up. Get to know them before you need them. Get to just pick up the phone, call their office, find out if you can, come in and have a meeting with them, introduce yourself. Most of us tend to do that when our house is on fire. Oh my God, I need help. At that point, you're just a cog in the wheel and you're just another frantic person. If you have made contact with them in advance and befriended them and told them you're a local dog trainer and you know everything about dogs, and when stuff comes up about dogs, you wish they'd give you a call, they're more likely to take what you have to say when you do need them. So I don't know this, again, she's not in my district, but AKC just had a legislative conference, and that's one of the things that they really encouraged us all to do, get to know our legislators.
Okay.
So now I have to go meet my legislators.
And to answer Jeff's question, she is a Democrat. So
no, I don't know how anybody else feels about any of this.
Anybody else want to comment on this?
I mean, I'll say this, in this day and age, we don't hear this, but, there was a time, we can go back 20 years, 25 years, where I knew a dog trainer, a New York City dog trainer. He's pretty good at it and stuff, was on the Johnny Carson show with his dogs, he could train. He had this thing about, first of all, he charged like $500 for a session. And I thought that was pretty amazing back then. And the other thing was, if you'd complain to him on the phone about your dog, he would ask, do you have a problem if I strike your dog? Because this is what we're talking about. This is somebody who up front on the phone, if you hesitated to answer, he hung up. He wanted to hear, no problem. If you hesitated for a moment, he hung up on you. He wasn't, but that was a tool of his, it
was a screening question.
Yeah. Do you have a problem if I strike your dog? It's like, whoa, whoa. The only one I ever heard of that, went down that road and was so
blatant about it.
And if you hesitated, he hung up, he wouldn't take you on. So, it's funny to say, punch and kick, here's a guy who's like, I'm coming out to probably do those things. You got a problem, but it's not as crazy a thing as, it sounds like to me, but because I actually know somebody who that was their way, or at least a piece of the way. It's unheard of nowadays, but I get it. I get it. I don't like it. And I always kind of kick back to the vet tech thing because it's the only thing that I have that could maybe resemble it. Because back in the day, you could be a vet tech. You go work in an animal hospital. It's like getting a card to be a dog trainer, right? You just go into the animal hospital. The vet says, "I'll train you," and then next thing they're calling you a vet tech. And that didn't work out because there was no uniform education.
Sure.
Of course, there were no tests or any of that stuff. So when that finally came around, they had to sort of tighten up the program, right? I mean, what do you need to know? How proficient do you have to be in all of these different areas? And how do we check? And in the early days, it was checked by a written test, verbal examination, and a practicum. You had to do stuff in front of these people. That's how, there was a 3-part thing. It took all day and all that kind of stuff. And it was a nightmare. Now they have written, just like you can go and take a dog trainer's course online, you could take a vet tech course online also. Nobody's looking. I don't get how they really do that, but things change. We don't have, what do we have? We don't have, it's not that tight. And if it were, to this day, I have to say, the veterinary technology profession still sits pretty underneath the veterinary umbrella.
Yeah.
So politically, vet techs, I think, are a little bit squelched to this day. They don't have like really good freedom to speak on a lot of like things that go on in their world, like working so many hours, not getting necessarily paid, the discrepancy in pay, education, And so for dog trainers to finally get into that, there would have to be some sort of, where's the big umbrella, who really would say, this is what you have to be proficient in. And the way things are going, it would be really difficult now, because some folks think that this is the education you need only.
Right.
This way or that way only. And then, these guys only. And if you say, well, it's all of it, then how do you get tested for all of it? Right. I can't see how we as a profession can really get with that. As it is, all of the organizations that exist, as far as I'm concerned, are very self-serving. People have asked me for years and years, how come you don't have like those initials?
Right.
I never joined. Well, why not? Because, who made them in charge?
Right.
Who are they? They who are going to test me, I have to have some sort of respect, belief that the people that are testing me, I have tremendous respect for on many levels. And I don't see any
We lost you for a minute there, Steve. Sorry.
Lost the audio.
Yeah, so I'm just saying,
Nope, you're out again.
I'm out.
Yeah,
Hey,
something's
Joel-
rubbing up against the microphone, it sounds like.
Joel,
Yeah, go ahead.
can you mute me?
Yeah, sure.
It's the wind.
Oh, it's the wind. Okay, sorry. Sorry, Steve. Thank you.
It's blowing all the way up to New York? That's amazing.
Right through my room here.
So I
I-
wanted to comment about something
Wow.
which, you were talking, Steve, about who's going to watch out over all of this. But what I kind of got from this bill was that the clients are the ones who are going to make these decisions, and the clients, the dog trainers are going to tell the clients what they're doing, every single thing that they're doing with, and as I always say, I am not a dog trainer. So if a dog trainer told me every single thing that they were going to do with my dog and why they are doing it and etc., I'm not sure I could even handle that. So I wonder what clients would do with all of this information.
Well, first
Bonnie,
of
you
all,
were going to say something?
No, I was just going to add that what Steve was talking about, some kind of standard for dog trainers and dog training. If dogs are just property, how that comes into play with that there's no, I mean, veterinarians have a good organization and they protect themselves and they're, very worthy and stand together. But for some reason, I just thought, because I saw a case recently where somebody wanted to sue for a FedEx driver killing their dog for emotional distress because it was their family member and they were ruled against.
Yeah.
And so my mind was just going to, because it's an animal, can we ever get some kind of standard for dog trainers and dog training and be respected and have a governing body like doctors do, like vets do, like dentists do? That's just the thought I had.
Yeah, but Bonnie,
was
what I'm saying is that according to this bill, it's not a governing body. It is the trainers telling the clients. And it's not like they're saying there is a set thing of what to do. It's saying that they have to tell their clients everything.
So, I might say to a client, okay, so based on what I see on your dog today, And again, there's that diagnosis, which is, that's like
Yes,
not even.
I
a
found
thing.
that one interesting.
Yeah,
That's
certainly.
just- that doesn't even apply to what we do.
right.
But that concept that, okay, I might use a flat buckle collar, I might use a prong collar, I might use a slip collar, and these are what all those different collars do. I don't think any client wants to hear all of that, first of all.
Sure.
What all the different tools do that's in somebody's repertoire. I think that what they're, that's like asking, I mean, I've had this happen. This is like a doctor saying, okay, would you prefer this anesthetic or that anesthetic? I don't know. I'm not an anesthesiologist.
Sure.
I don't know. You tell me what's the appropriate anesthesia. And that happened, and it was a little mind-blowing. So our clients don't know what they don't know. So informed consent makes it very difficult. That whole concept of explaining everything up front and all of that. It's just it's an odd approach.
Yes.
I've seen licensure on the book, as a bill. I've seen that sort of thing. But this is sort of, I'm wondering personally who wrote this bill up and suggested it, because very often this stuff comes from HSUS, comes from PETA, comes from some outside party from all of this that writes up the terminology and gives it to your legislator or their aide and says, here, I've got just the language for you.
Most definitely. Sure. Jeff, were you going to say something?
Well, I guess I'll start with what Pam was just saying. My guess, my money would be on the Association of Pet Dog Trainers. That's where this verbiage sounds like it came from. Just my 2 cents. I don't know that. We'd have to dig a little deeper on the relationship of the sponsor of this bill and who she potentially is affiliated with, obviously. But there's some organization out there that will benefit from this.
Yes,
that's
most definitely
been my experience with politicians.
If not the lawyers, at the very least.
Yeah. As far as, I mean, I just think of the conversations I have with potential clients when I'm on the phone. Like, this is stuff we talk about. They ask me questions. I answer them. As far as kicking and abuse, that we already have laws in all 50 states where that type of behavior would constitute animal abuse. So it's like, it's like all other laws that they make new laws to stop something that there's already laws on the books that are supposed to stop.
Most
they're
definitely.
not enforcing.
Like murder. Murder is illegal. But there's, every time someone else is murdered in a new and different way, they want to come up with a new law that you can't murder this way. Like, it makes no sense to me. But from as far as, there's a few layers to this. Obviously, is us answering questions that our clients ask us when we're on phone calls. Number one. Number two, our clients are consumers. There is a certain level of responsibility on the consumer too. Right? Caveat emptor, buyer beware. Right.
Right.
That's been the part of consumerism, if that's even a word, for as long as I've been alive.
Yep.
Right. Now, as far as what we're going to do, here's my problem is people ask me all the time, well, what are you going to do? Oh, shoot, my stupid computer. And I say, I don't know. And they say, well, what do you mean you don't know? I said, well, I don't know your dog. I never met your dog. So I don't really know what I'm going to do. What's that?
Here he is. You froze.
Oh, I
You're
did?
back. It's okay.
Oh, yeah. So it's like I don't know your, huh?
No, I'm agreeing with you, Jeff, that you can't tell them everything because you don't know, you haven't met the dog.
Yeah, if they have a 10-week-old puppy, I could tell them exactly what I'm going to do. We're going to spend a half hour. I'm going to teach the dog, sit down, come and stay.
Right.
And they're like, huh? But I go to a class and it takes 6 weeks. I'm like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, that's just what people want to charge you to string you along for 6 weeks, right? I said, I'm going to teach the foundation. You're going to train the dog. That's how this is going to work, right? And just a couple of weeks ago, I had a private session, and the woman contacted me because she interviewed a few trainers and wasn't happy with them, and asked me, and I told her what I do and that sometimes I use tools. And she said, well, what do you mean by tools? So I explained. I said, I might use a harness, I might use a gentle leader, I might use a martingale, I might use a Star Mark collar. I don't know. I
Mhm.
might just use a bag of treats.
Mhm.
I just don't know. So long story short, we went there, and this is a recently adopted 1-year-old hound.
Mm.
Okay. So think about how you leave your house when you know you're going to a home that just adopted a 1-year-old hound that is not trained, right? Everybody, you could see the, oh shit. Like, that's what I was thinking when I left the house. Anyway, I showed her a couple of things that I was going to take on the walk with us. One of them
Mhm.
being a star mark collar. Primarily because the dog was a flight risk, and I prefer a star mark because no dog is getting out of that.
Mhm.
Anyway, long story short, we didn't need anything other than their collar because this particular dog responded really well to redirected walks and food. And
Mhm.
that's all we needed. And we get back to the house. She goes, what about the tools? I'm like, well, how do you think the walk went? She said it was great. It was the best walk we had. I'm like, so then we don't need tools.
Mhm.
Right? But the answer, I didn't know that before I got there.
Of course.
So answering those, the legislation is just like we should be doing that anyway, as far as disclosing and answering as many questions as possible
Mhm.
where possible.
Mhm.
But as far, and what was what was the last line of that, Joel?
Including the option, if no,
Is
the
it
nature and
signing
purpose of the
something, or-
dog trainer's recommended interventions to train the dog, and the burdens, risks, and expected benefits of all training
Right.
options, including the option to forgo training.
Right. Yeah. So okay, yeah, that was the part I was. So the risk is that the owner will not follow through with training.
Mhm.
That's always our biggest risk.
Sure.
Is that the owner doesn't follow through. And then as far as completing the transaction, right? And I'm not a lawyer. I play one on TV. No, I'm just kidding. But if they pay us for our services and they're happy with our services, it's happened to me. After the fact, they've called me or contacted me and complained about maybe I used a star mark collar because I know someone was chirping in their ear. And then there was some, a post-mortem, if you will. And I said, okay, well, how is your relationship with your dog? Awesome. How are your walks? Awesome. Are you using the collar only and when I told you to, and how I told you to? Yes. Has there been any repercussions or any negative feedback from your dog? And has your relationship gotten stronger? And after you talk them through it, they realize, and this is probably getting into the tools versus no tools thing, but the
Sure.
bottom line is that even if we fully disclose, we still run the risk of having some kind of post-mortem or something after the fact. But
Definitely.
I think just as long as we're transparent,
Okay.
I think this legislation is, it is what it is. It's just there's stuff on the books already to prevent animal abuse.
Mhm.
It's kind of a problem. It's kind of a solution looking for a problem, I think.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, usually they create the problem and then give us a solution so they look like heroes.
On a side note,
It's
Jeff, are you
strange.
part of the Blue Man Group, just out of curiosity?
It's my stupid
Oh.
computer screen because I know, right? I can't. I don't even know where the hell the friggin'
It
power
doesn't
button
bother me. I
is.
just think it's
No
funny.
worries.
It's bothering me.
Oh,
So,
all right.
so to move on to the concept of licensure, as Steve was talking about, who administers it, who designs it.
Mhm. Yeah.
When you start making comparisons to professional organizations and that sort of thing, doctors and lawyers and whatever, my husband is a licensed chiropractor. Back in the day when he got his license, if he had a thought of practicing in 4 or 5 different states, he had to go to those states to take their boards.
Right.
He actually had to physically sit in Virginia to take their boards, and he had to physically sit in Maryland to take their boards, and in New York. And that was a little burdensome
Mhm.
to have to, go. Now there's a way, I believe there's a national
Mhm.
kind of a thing that, and there's more reciprocity. And that's another thing, is that one state didn't, acknowledge anybody else's licensure. So you had to do that. But,
Mhm.
the skill set that he learned at the school that he went to was not so dissimilar from the skill set that somebody learned at another school,
Mhm.
except that the emphasis may have been more science, more esoteric, that sort of thing. What we do is very much, there's a lot of art to dog training. It is not a science. I don't care what anybody says. I don't know about all these modern scientific dog trainers. There is no science to dog training. Other than, yes, this is likely to work, and no, this is not. But even that is not that scientific. So, do we have a national criteria for dog trainers who administers those tests? I happen to have some of those letters after my name, or I did, because I happened to be a member of one of those organizations. And when they implemented a certification program, they decided to grandfather in some of their early members.
Mhm.
So I was grandfathered in, and I earned those letters after my name by being a member of this organization for a decade.
Mhm.
I sat on the committee that reviewed submissions for certification at a later date, after they had gotten that in place. And there was a written test, and there were letters required from your customers, your clients, that yes, you did what you
Sure.
said you were going to, or
Mhm.
these are the steps that they, it was a whole written thing. But honestly, there is no, how do you compare the person who uses compulsion to the person who doesn't? How do you compare, did the job get done? Took this person, they're still in the process 6 months to get the job done because of their teaching method. It's going to take longer versus the person who got the job done like Jeff did today. I taught the dog 6 things today versus the person who took 6 months to teach those 6 things. Does that get held against you in one way or another in a certification? I don't know.
Mhm.
Does the client consider any of that when they're hiring somebody? I don't know.
I
Too many
think,
variables.
right,
So many.
what about this one? Because I saw this yesterday, I think. If a dog growls at you, do you correct it?
I saw this too.
Or do you say, oh, lucky he growled, now you kind of pissed him off, and go figure out why he growled or whatever, right? Well, I can't imagine that there's a correct answer to that.
Mhm.
I think it depends on the
Absolutely.
The answer is it depends.
right. It depends. I mean, you can't, if the dog growl, let it go. Well, there are sometimes maybe you better let it go, or you're gonna run.
But Steve,
Speaking of dog bites.
Steve, you bring up a really good point, especially as it pertains to tests and stupid questions like that. Like, I've seen those dumb questions, and I call them dumb because we all know that a growl is only part of the sentence that the dog is trying to communicate.
Mhm.
What else is in the environment? What's the position of the ears, the tail, the posture, the lips, the eyes?
Mhm.
There's so much to it that we look at and we know right then and there. So
And the breed.
the answer to what happens if it growls, I don't know, because I need the rest of the information to give you an actual educated answer.
Fighting, Jeff. They're actually, there's arguments about this. There's never a reason to correct a growling dog. It's like, well, I don't know, I can't get with that, so, why is it that somebody says something and that's it, period?
Never. Yeah.
I say because, whatever my credentials are, that this is the way it is, and I went to school and and all that. But you probably never touched a leash in your life, so, there's a lot of things. And, I hate to say this, but it's complicated.
It is. Somebody had written on Facebook that at least that every dog trainer should get a CD on a dog and then there's some standard and some proof that you can handle a dog and do some training. And the blowback on that comment, the person was just trying to say we need a standard of some sort, and maybe, get a CD and at least you have some handling chops or some training chops, and
Or do you just have a good dog?
A good dog, you put in a whole lot of work, which counts for something. But the blowback was, I'm a pet dog trainer. I work with aggression cases. Why would I need a CD? That's not a behavior. How would that help you with behavior cases? So and then another whole fight, not fight, but dog trainer fight type happened because of this person saying that. And I understood what she was saying, because actually when I got a CD on a dog, it wasn't that easy. It did give me some, it's kind of like, if you're a musician, musicians always say, even if you're a jazz musician, learn classical music, because it gives you the chops, something else that somebody else doesn't have. But no, nothing is set in stone that that's the way, that you have to do X to get to a certain point with a dog as a trainer, because they're all different types. And anyhow, that's where my mind went with this discussion of standards, in some way having a standard for dog trainers.
We don't seem even close, the way things are going.
Nope.
I just don't see, because there's not even that like top tier, well respected by everybody group thing happened, so
Right.
we would need that, because even so go to the other professions, there's always that top tier medical or whatever.
Yeah, right. Board certified.
Right, exactly. And then there's they will have elections to swap these people out, but it's among all of these, the group and stuff over time. You don't always like the person who's up there, but they have those credentials where, and if everybody respects them, then you've got a starting point to jump from. We don't have that. I don't see it. We don't have that. Right now, we still have the, the lions and the tigers like fighting, right, about what correct is. And, it's difficult. Look, I've always kind of been that, I don't hate to ride the line, but, I love well, if there's any science, it's about learning, teaching and learning. Right. I appreciate that stuff, I appreciate leash handling skills. You don't learn that from, a psychology book or anything.
Right.
And I had mentors, that would yell at me if I didn't do stuff right. And, thank goodness for that. And that's all I could say. And I appreciate that I had that. If I didn't have that, I feel like I'd be at a kind of a loss, so every little thing is helpful. But to say that, this is correct, that you only have to be able to work a leash, is a terrible thing. I've seen people who couldn't read, be amazing dog trainers.
Sure.
No education, none. 8th grade, like really not going to be any talk about Skinner, it was none of that. It was a feel for the animal.
A feeling, yep, for animals.
Great technique, great and the animals, and amazing communication and training. And then there's the other ones, the other side, which, amazing education. Some of them, you got to appreciate what they've done with what they know.
Sure.
But then there are the other ones who, good coach, can't play, but, so what do they say?
Well, when we get down to brass tacks here, we don't even all have the same working terminology. We don't agree on words. What does positive mean to you? What does negative mean to you? Are we talking happy, happy, joy, joy versus sad? Or are we talking additive and removal? Which, when we start talking positive and negative reinforcement, we're talking about additive or subtractive.
Right.
And the average pet owner who's hiring us is thinking that positive reinforcement is having a party for your dog, and negative reinforcement is saying no and being mean. And none of that is on the same page. So if we can't agree on words, if we're not all talking about this, what is your definition of aggression, of reactive, of any of those words that get thrown around every day? So if we as a profession can't come to that, I'm not sure that we as a profession can then come to a single standard for licensure or for informed consent. What do I tell
Agreed.
my clients that all these different tools are or will do versus what you, Steve, tell your clients what all these different tools are, or what David or Jeff or Bonnie, we are all maybe using different words talking about the same tool. To me, it's the best tool on the planet. To you, it's like,
Well,
Mhm.
the
so
other thing
that
too,
also
Pam,
gets in the way of all of this.
Yeah,
Pam, there's also, I agree with you 100%, but I think our generation, we are like most of us talk about operant conditioning, regardless of where we fall on the dog training spectrum. We can all have a conversation about operant conditioning. The problem is the younger generation, they're literally twisting the words and the meanings of these things to fit a single methodology agenda.
Right.
Okay. For instance, positive punishment. When I say positive punishment, I don't need to tell any of you what I'm talking about. If you say that to a younger person, they're going to say, well, you shouldn't hit a dog.
You said
And I'm like,
punishment.
You said punishment.
and then I say, look, little laddie, okay? You can implement positive punishment without even touching a dog, okay? The word aversive doesn't mean that you slit a dog's face open with a knife. It
Right.
means unpleasant, right? Like we have to teach them basic definitions of words, right? I mean, look at Lima. Look how twisted Lima has gotten over the years because of this younger generation who don't understand why Lima was created and what exactly it means. They don't know what the word least means. So how the hell are we gonna? How can we agree on anything if this younger generation doesn't even understand what the word least means? Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's a generational gap, which I think we've talked about on here.
Yes, we have.
yeah.
We have.
And it's challenging, and it's not to say that we're not open to new ideas. I feel like you guys are like, my extended dog family, and I think that we all have learned things from just being on these forums.
Of course.
And I always want to continue to learn, but I'm not going to change the definition of words because you got your skivvies in a twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David, you haven't really said much. You got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think everyone said everything that needed to be said, but yeah, I mean, to me, I think the verbiage is just that verbiage. Yeah, there's an important meaning behind it, but I think the average dog owner really doesn't care what they mean necessarily, or they may think they know what something means, and you just kind of say, yeah, whatever. If you don't want to get into it, all they really care about is helping their dog. That's all. That's the bottom line. If you can help their dog, and in a nice way, that's all that really matters. And getting down to like the legalities of things, how do you enforce that? And what are you gonna do? Write something up like, this is what the dog trainer, this is what my responsibility is going to be. This is what you're supposed to bring to the table, and we're going to write that up. And as we're talking about, there's so many different variables. We could set that up and write a whole nice little page or two of that whole thing. And as we go through it, we're like, oh, wait, the dog is reacting a little different. It's not responding to this. Let's try something else. Okay, wait a minute. Let's write up a whole other page. I mean, you don't go to the doctor and do that, right? Like we talk about doctors, you don't do that. The only thing that you're really signing off on, typically when you go to a doctor's office, right, is just for them to be able to release those medical records to appropriate, people, what have you, whether it be a family member or other medical professionals. Other than that, it's just he said, she said. And that's why they, and sometimes us, we have insurance to cover, God forbid we do get sued, or they get sued, or what have you.
Sure.
For malpractice or whatever it may be. So
you're right. And if you go back to a doctor, if they suggest something or give you something and it didn't work, you just go back to them and you tell them, and then they maybe try something else, and they're not, they didn't have to sign anything, and you sign anything to say, this is what I'm agreeing to do. And, they're, please.
Right. And just like us, if you're not happy with that, you're like, oh, you're not going to get to the legal, you're not going to sue them. You just weren't happy. It didn't work out great.
Right.
I'm going to go see another doctor. Well, in our case, I don't like this dog trainer. Go see another dog trainer.
Right. Or
really
you go
no
back
different.
to the dog trainer and say, look, that didn't work for me. Can we try something else? This is what's going on. That's the communication you're supposed to have.
That's just it.
Not, yeah.
So trainers, I think it's definitely been an interesting conversation today. Unfortunately, I don't think that this would be the last time that this kind of issue is going to come up,
Mm.
whether it be in Pam's state of Vermont or Jeff's state of North Carolina or our state of New York. Unfortunately, I think people are going to try and impose whatever they want to impose upon this profession. And I really like what Pam said, is that there's a lot of artistry to it. So how do you impose that? And I think that's a good place to leave it. So with that, trainers, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank everybody for watching, and don't forget to like us on Facebook and give a thumbs up to this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, folks. Bye-bye.